All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries.
I don't.
I'll be there.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I'm jet lagged. Bye.
Oop, gotta change the background. This is old.
Okay. I'm majorly jet lagged, but I'm here.
We're both like, oh, wait. It's been like a month for me. I'm like,
don't
wait,
know.
oh, right. Thanks.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so call to order is at 7:05. Roll call, Andrea is excused absence. District 2, Kristen and Danielle. Present. Larry Bender. Present. Deborah Howe. Present. John Lent. Absent.
No presents for him.
No presents. Nope. Jim Stanfield has an excused absence. Molly Brown present. And Trish Bartell present. Under chairperson announcements, we have one vacancy in LOCAC, and that is in District 3. So please go out there, talk to friends, see if you can find anyone, and this could go in the newsletter. We're still looking for someone for District 3.
Can you remind us where District 3 is?
Larry, do you want to remind her where District 3 is?
I know it's for me on the other side of South Bay Boulevard, east of South Bay, but it also goes way into town somewhere there.
Up around
So I'd have
Highland.
to look at the map.
Yeah. So it goes both sides of Los Osos Valley Road, east of South Bay. So we are going to be voting on Jennifer during our business items tonight. Are there any council member announcements?
I have been prompted by Deborah to highlight that we have our fantastic, there we go, the fantastic emergency calendar. And it is full of idyllic photos, which apparently only work if my face is in front of it. Nope. Anyway, there's an idyllic photo behind me, but it's not one of them. But if anyone has never looked in it, it has a free coupon for potassium iodide, so that if there is an emergency, we know exactly where we should go, especially with regard to the nuclear plant. It has zones, so you can see where you should be going and what you should be doing. You should enjoy a calendar. If not, I bet you can get another one from PG&E.
Perfect.
It's the only place I know of that we get a free, beautiful calendar every year. No need to buy them. You can give them as gifts, wonderful gifts. Okay, here we go.
Are there any other council member announcements? And I am still on jet lag, just coming back from Paris yesterday. So county and local reports, there is no sheriff here tonight, no highway patrol here tonight. So let's go to Claire. And Claire, you got a small audience tonight, so there'll be lots of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
And
nice.
I did say to share screen, so you should be up.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, well, just for the regular update, the tree removal requests, plan, and permit reports went to Larry and Trish this week. It's a little shorter because our last report was from November 21st. I think it was. And so the next report in January will be much larger. But if you come across any questions, please let me know or let Trish know and she'll let me know. In terms of county planning updates, the LOHCP, the Habitat Conservation Plan, obviously was submitted to the Fish and Wildlife Service in August. We've had some back and forth with them, and there are a couple more tasks that they would like us to complete that are not complicated, but will take a little bit more time. And so we're still in that phase of coordinating with them on those tasks. And then, yeah, so tonight, Trish is giving me the opportunity to give a little bit of just a really brief overview of the Title 19 and Title 8 Los Osos offset program amendments that are being proposed by staff before the board in February. So I'm just gonna go and head on into that presentation, and if there are any questions, please write them down and save them for after the presentation. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint?
We can.
Yes.
Okay. To start off, that's the wrong date. I apologize. But that is a good point, that I am giving the same presentation now that was given to the Los Osos Basin Management Committee last week. So, as most people know that are involved in Los Osos, we completed a study or an audit this summer of our existing offset program, the Los Osos Water Offset Study, that's been out and available for public review since June. After the results of that audit, on October 17th, the County Board of Supervisors requested that staff propose draft amendments to the Title 19 Los Osos Offset Program. Staff has drafted those amendments, and we released that public review draft on November 27th. And then that's open up for public comment until December 31st. So a little bit over 30 days. We're giving as much time as we can for the public to review that before we have to prepare the ordinance for hearing. And then the hearing will be on February 27th. So December 31st, public comment is due. And then I just want to summarize the amendments a little bit. And as a refresher, the amendments were made by staff based on the results of the offset study that we completed in June this year, but also based off of the public comment that has been received on the program over the past couple of years. So the first change is that in both Title 8 and Title 19, we've updated the program map. So on the left is the map that exists in both ordinances right now, where the dashed line is the prohibition zone, the light gray is the basin boundary, and then the dark gray is the exception areas to the prohibition zone. We want to extract that map, and we're proposing the one on the right, where the dashed line represents the urban reserve line of Los Osos, and the dark blue line represents the basin boundary that's in line with the basin boundary in the Los Osos Basin Plan that is managed by the Basin Management Committee. The next change to both ordinances and to both the retrofit upon sale and retrofit to build program is some new fixture flow requirements. Toilets are now being, rather than being 1.6 gallons per flush, we are requiring an effective flush rate of at least at most 1.0 gallons per flush. Effective flush rate is terminology that's used to just encapsulate dual flush toilets. So basically the overall number would have to be 1.0 gallons per flush. And then shower head requirements are changing from 2.5 gallons per minute to 1.5 gallons per minute. And then now zeroing in on Title 19, the retrofit to build program. This is a large change that we are proposing that bathroom retrofits can come from within the prohibition zone or the sewer service area. This ordinance was last amended at the time that the sewer was going in, and the requirements to connect to the sewer were to update fixture requirements. And so because technically the homes in the prohibition zone had updated to the highest requirement of our code, we didn't we couldn't allow offsets to come from that area because the offsets had already been completed. But the offset study, the audit that we completed this summer, revealed that because it's been almost 8-ish years since the sewer came online, there is potential to install even more efficient bathroom fixtures in the prohibition zone. So we're opening that area up as a source of offsets for retrofitting to build. And then this is the next change, is that total offset or total water savings required to build is now, we're proposing it be dependent upon the water source, that is a water purveyor or a well or self-source, and also the parcel size. And then the requirements have been changed to group together multifamily and mobile home requirements. And that's based on the methodology we had to use to come up with the total water savings in the offset study. Then there are a couple program implementation changes that we're proposing. The first is that staff will conduct post-installation inspections at random throughout the community to verify that installations have been made and are being maintained if they were used as a source of offsets. The second is that the department will update the total water savings requirements every 5 years using the method that was established in the study. The third is that the department will be authorized to conduct a pilot program to test an outdoor water conservation program, as outdoor is not a program that we have in Los Osos currently. And fourth, that the requirements have been, like the tables have been taken, we're proposing that they be taken out of the ordinance language and put in the program applications, just to make it more accessible for people. And then kind of into the nitty gritty, when we look at, you know, someone replacing a toilet in their home, how much water savings does that amount to? This in the bold at the bottom of this table, that equation there is what staff will use and what applicants are required to use to determine how much water is being saved per toilet. And then another, this is for shower heads, same idea. In the bold at the bottom of that table, that's the equation that applicants are required to use to determine the total water savings they've achieved. The 15.1 average here and back for toilets, the 13.8 average, that didn't come from nowhere. That's justified in the offset study that was published this summer. And then there is a change to how we'll calculate water savings from washers. A comment that we've received over the years is that the assumption of loads per year, if you see the third part of that equation, has been historically too high for the residents of Los Osos. We've adapted that to, it used to be a little over 300 loads per year. We've adapted that to 203 loads per year based on an energy survey by the Energy Institute. And that 203 is now based on, rather than a national average, it's based on Los Osos being in a marine climate. And so I can go into detail later if there's questions, but that was just public comment that we had received and we wanted to address that. And finally, if you're not aware, hot water recirculation systems have been offered up as a source of offsets for building. We had currently, it's like a flat number that if you do it, you have this much, water savings. Now we're making that a little bit more involved to be a little bit more accurate, because the water savings really come from reducing the distance between the hot water source in the home and the plumbing fixture that's being used. This system is supposed to be more efficient in getting hot water to the plumbing fixture. And so there's a little hot water volume calculator from the EPA that we have vetted and are proposing is this method for applicants to determine how much water is actually being saved by installing one of these systems. So that's overview of the proposed program changes. I'm open for any questions or comments or anything. I'll be writing them down.
Okay, do we have any questions from council members?
I don't have questions. I'm just thrilled to see what the revisions include, because those are things I've advocated for a while. So yay.
Okay, Molly, you have your hand up?
Yes. So I guess my question is about it's more of an overview question about this this water offset program. Is the idea that if somebody wants to build, they would do these various things and somebody would do an analysis and figure out if they have enough credits to build a house, and if they did, then they could build a house?
Mm-hmm. High level, that's exactly right.
And but is that inside the prohibition zone?
So this is not authorizing, this is not lifting the building moratorium for the prohibition zone. That will still remain in effect. This is for properties that are outside of the prohibition zone that technically can build a new home. This is their route to achieving offsets in order to be able to build the new home.
So any new homes outside the prohibition zone are having to meet these requirements?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? No, great report, Claire. I read the whole thing through. Larry, did you have a question?
One second. Claire, so if someone was building a house outside the prohibition zone, according to what you said, they can go inside the prohibition zone to get their credits. They're building the house outside the prohibition zone, but they can go inside the prohibition zone to get those credits. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they can, before they weren't allowed, just because the code was, their requirement to connect to the sewer was the same as the code. So there's the ceiling was met. Yeah, but now, because there's been more efficient technology out on the market, there's what the study showed us was that there's significant potential for offsets to be harvested from the prohibition zone.
Yeah. Okay.
But you still can't build a new home.
Yes. Yeah.
And the timeline, Claire, for public comments is still 12/31, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
December 31st. Before you go to your New Year's Eve party.
Make sure you have all of your comments in.
Those are your priorities.
Those are the priorities. Yep. All right.
I had one quick
Danielle?
question. I just feel like I'm still playing catch up on terminology. Prohibition zone, does that just mean where we're prohibited from building new homes? Cool.
On vacant lots.
On vacant lots. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's mainly in the Baywood area. Any place where the sewer is, that's part of the prohibition zone. If you're not on the sewer, if you're in an area that allows septic, either a large parcel, they can be on septic, or if you're in the areas outside of the sewer service area, then you're not in the prohibition zone.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank
Any other questions or comments for Claire? All right, let's move on to Blake.
Good evening, everyone. All right. I wanted to share some on the advisory council update and handbook. Did you want to save that to the discussion later on in the meeting?
No, go ahead.
Okay, great. As some of you may know, on December 5th, the board heard an item on advisory councils and an update to the advisory council handbook. The main gist of which was a thorough revision to the advisory council handbook with a focus on tools and suggestions for Some of the advisory councils who might be struggling or might not be sure of what their role in the community or in partnership with the county is. Some of the updates to the handbook include the Code of Civility, clear bylaws to which advisory councils should adhere to, and some example forms on how to review or give comments on a project or items of interest in the community. What we had found from the survey was that some of the advisory councils, and I don't think that yours was necessarily one of the ones where we're having some struggle and having some confusion as to what their role was or what the process was or what resources they might be able to get or provide to the county. To further clarify that, there will be the revival, the long-needed revival of training for new or returning advisory council members. That is currently scheduled to be held in late April or early May, as most councils will have had their elections by that point. It should be noted with a big asterisk that advisory councils, this is suggestions and helpful advice, but advisory councils are independent organizations and can do what they will with it. But overall, I think it was a good item and hopefully was helpful to some of the ones that might have needed some further clarification or some advice on how to give helpful comment. Also on December 5th, the board had their planning priorities item. The planning department tackles things on the annual basis, more bigger picture things, not just the reviewing applications and different permits that come through, but more of kind of the major revisions. And so the board was looking at what they might want to tackle in 2024, with the caveat that it's going to be a tight budget year, and we need to make sure that we're properly setting the table with not too many things on it. So with that, a few of the things that they decided to bring back for consideration was an update to the safety element, specifically dead-end roads and fire safety requirements, an update to the county's housing policy, specifically analysis of housing possibilities in commercially zoned land and options for requiring affordable housing in development proposals. The board also put on the list of potential to-dos. None of this is for sure to-dos until we get the quote-unquote bill for what these things would cost. But research into storefront cannabis dispensaries, and that would be gathering information on how storefront cannabis is operated in the cities and elsewhere in the state. That includes things like setbacks, operational conditions. That one's more just getting some information gathering and then return to the board before any significant resources are spent. And I think the other one was an update to the Napomo community plan. Beyond that, we have no further board meetings for the remainder of this year, but there is going to be one in January 16th, a special meeting, an evening meeting of the Board of Supervisors with the sole item of discussing an independent redistricting committee. You might remember that was, I think, back in September. The board showed interest in a potential 11-member redistricting commission to hear and approve maps following the 2030 census. And that committee wouldn't be appointed by any supervisor. It would be comprised of qualified members of the public who submitted application. And that may show up as a measure on the fall 2024 ballot, but we will be learning more about that on the evening of January 16th. Also, of good news, we got Corey Hahn back to the county in the planning department. So he took over. Claire, he's in long range planning, right?
Yeah, long range planning division manager.
Yeah, because we're not going to lose Claire. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
Not letting
He
Claire
is
go, but
ours.
we welcome Corey back. He was
Yeah.
very
I
good.
say that just to say that we have another Los Osos expert back in
That's
county
great.
planning.
The more the merrier. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
So
That
that's
was
all I
a
had.
Christmas present, Blake. Thank you.
Yeah. No, we were happy to hear about that. It's good to have. I think Corey went down to Pismo Beach,
Mhm.
and maybe they weren't busy enough for him, so he decided to come back to the county. That's what I had prepared, but I'm happy to answer any questions on any of those topics or anything that the council might have for me.
So we, Blake, we have our own code of conduct, for going back to the handbook, which I think is even more detailed than what the county produced. We can just use our current code of conduct, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That would be an example language to use if perhaps you didn't have a code of conduct.
Okay.
But
Because,
you are free to use whatever you want, and I think the more specific, the better.
okay, perfect.
I have a comment.
Deborah?
So Blake, I didn't see you, but I was definitely at that Board of Supervisors meeting. And the big high level takeaway I got was that each advisory council is unique because each community is unique, and that we have an opportunity to create the council that we feel best serves our community. We have a lot of leeway, and that what's coming from the county are suggestions, and not regulations. And I would let you bring this up, but the reason, and I think this is an important reason, is because if the county required us to do certain things, that would mean that the county was sanctioning us or formalizing us in some way, and then legal counsel would have to get involved and make sure. In other words, county council would have to come to every one of our meetings, make sure that we didn't break any laws, that we were, following the rules, and that's not going to happen. County council is not going to show up at every advisory council meeting. So we have to be on our own best behavior. So it's like most things, there's two sides to the coin. We have a lot of leeway to create the council we want, but we also have a lot of responsibility that we take on for that.
You are 100% correct. I think that
Okay.
was a point that was very important to make. I think what the goal of this was to perhaps raise the floor on some of the advisory councils that would be struggling, and not put a ceiling or requirement on any council. As you put, they are independent organizations. They are supposed to adhere to the spirit of the Brown Act, but you are not held to the letter of the law of the Brown Act that would require you to have counsel at every meeting, like you just said. So I think these were some helpful guidelines to keep councils on good behavior. I will say, and not just because I'm in front of you now, that I don't think yours was one of the councils that was worried about.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And there is a standardized form in the handbook that allows people to communicate with county staff in a way that I think is going to be very helpful.
Yeah, that was one of the things I think that came out of the survey, as I think certain councils in the county didn't, I think, understand that they don't have to just give a simple yes or no to projects, that they can say yes if thus and such, then the community supports it, or no, but if thus and such happened, then maybe we would feel better about it. And those kind of details are really important to planning staff and the planning commission. So to try to encourage that kind of more thorough answer, it was, I think, one of the goals of that, just trying to lay some groundwork for more discussion, not just yes or no.
Perfect. Council, any other questions for Blake? Molly?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So on the counties, let's see. So the first one you said was the updating the safety element. So does the county have a safety element already? And this
Yes.
is just an element. And you said what, dealing with dead end roads and
fire
wildfire
safety
stuff, fire safety stuff. Okay.
Things like, I'm imagining things like the requirements for, hammerhead turnouts and stuff like that on dead end roads for fire engines to get to.
And that's countywide. You're talking wide on all this stuff.
Correct.
And what were you saying specifically about the housing policy issue as it related to commercial buildings?
So Currently, and Claire, jump in if I'm misspeaking, but in a commercially zoned land use category, that housing wouldn't be allowed as a primary use. And in certain parts of the county, there is a lot of non-used commercial zoned land that could be used for residential if it were allowed in that zone. So an analysis of what kind of inventory might we have if we made that an allowed use in commercial zones.
Okay, so would that then affect undeveloped properties, or could it affect undeveloped and properties that are already somewhat developed with commercial?
I would think that would be both, but probably with a permit in both cases.
Yeah.
Not
Okay.
probably, but yes, with the permit of, depending on where you were at, coastal zone, inland, in either
Okay.
case.
And then can you explain about the cannabis business, about storefront cannabis operations, getting information about that, what that means,
Yeah.
what they're
So
looking for?
in the city, in many of the cities, I don't know exact number off the top of my head. I want to say it's 5 of them in the county. Storefront cannabis dispensaries are allowed in the unincorporated area. That is not currently allowed. Only mobile dispensaries are. And the county wanted to take a look into what that might look like, but be sensitive to if that basically the bottom line on how big of a financial look would that be to change the rules on that in 2024. So that might be something that they tackle in a future year, but get some preliminary information on what might that look like in the unincorporated area.
To have possibly in the future to have these retail outlets.
Correct.
Okay.
Like a
there would-
brick and mortar storefront in
Yeah.
the unincorporated area.
Okay. Let's see.
Molly, good clarification on that one, because I was like, okay, they're just seeing if they're effective or impacted. So
Well, I mean, I guess if it ends up happening, then there would be a lot of public involvement in that, right? If that was gonna be
Absolutely.
developed in the
That's not
future.
just one you slap on.
I mean, with the issues of like proximity to schools and residential zones
Yeah,
and all, there's
yeah.
a lot that goes into citing and locating those.
Exactly. It would be what kind of setbacks would we be looking at from those things that you just mentioned? What would the permit process look like? Or would we want to cap on them, you know, in what geographic disbursement, those kind of questions. But I think before we even get into those specifics, it would be just to look at how are the other cities and jurisdictions or in you know, near proximity to us doing it, and how is it working? Is it working for the community?
Yeah, okay. And is the idea that it would be a revenue stream for the county in terms of taxation or something? I mean, is that why they're looking at it?
That is one of the reasons, certainly.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, any other questions from council? If not, we'll move to public. Molly?
I do have one more, but did I already miss that on, oh, Blake did talk about the advisory council stuff. So, kind of goes to what Deborah was saying. Like at the county supervisors meeting, Supervisor Arnold made a big thing about not wanting anyone to have to sign anything. And did that relate on this document, a handbook? Like she didn't want anyone to have to sign a commitment to civility. Was that because of the legal concerns? Like not having a county attorney there or something like that?
Sure, let me clarify. I think no advisory council member would have to sign it. It was more of an example of how you all sign your own code of civility. But the county would not require advisory councils to sign the code of civility. So I think the point that she was making was these are good resources, but nobody is required to use them. No one is required to sign that code of civility. That was the example language. However, and I believe your council's case, it is in your bylaws that you have to sign
Right.
a code of civility. Is that right? So your
That's
own
correct.
advisory council would supersede any recommendations from the county.
Yeah, because I mean, it seems like such a basic thing, but like sign something saying you're willing to be civil in a meeting as a public hearing, or
One might
just
think.
sign something saying, hey, I went to the training event because I'm a new board member, you know,
Yeah.
it's like, it seems pretty minimal, and like this focus on not having to sign anything, I thought, I just didn't
Everything in
understand
that
it.
suggestion. It is not a requirement.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any other, Larry, did you have a question for Blake? No? Okay, I just saw your square went yellow for a moment for me. Okay. Okay, we will go to the public, and that is Lindy. I'll ask you to unmute yourself. Okay. There you
Okay,
go.
I think I unmuted.
Yep.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm sorry I came in late. I found a notice that said it was on the 15th, which then I went back and double checked.
Yeah.
And so I missed most of your introduction or your talk, Blake, but I watched the Board of Supervisors meeting on Tuesday and was a little kind of dismayed about the Oklahoma safe parking procedures that are going forward. So basically, if nobody saw it, they're getting to the very end and they're doing forced evictions on the last people that are there, which are actually probably the nicest of the whole group, unfortunately. And so my question was, considering that it was brought up that they are forming a union and a lawsuit, because basically the federal law, the Boise versus Idaho, says that if the county has a place for people to be safely off the streets, then they can't be evicted. Or if they don't have one, then they can live on the streets again. So it's kind of, I think, hitting every town and community across America. But we actually have a great place that some of these vehicles have been able to be for the last 2 years. And many of them have made strides. Some of them are just surviving because they can't, there's no place else for them to go, but they at least feel somewhat safe there. Considering what you heard at that meeting, is county council considering holding off on evicting these people by what I thought was today, the 14th? So if they have no place to go, they're going to be back on our streets, is what my concern is. That you can't hide a mobile home. And so I'm just wondering if you felt that the council is reconsidering this immediate eviction, if they're going to give more time and consideration to making it work.
The short answer to that is yes, that they will be given more time. I don't know a specific date on that, but part of the issue is that from the county's perspective, that there have been enough resources presented, and if people are not willing to take those resources, then we're kind of at an impasse. I know it's a very sensitive subject, and we heard a lot of that on Tuesday. But to directly answer your question, there was more time granted, especially considering weather close to the holidays, etc.
Thank you.
I'm very glad to hear that. And looking forward to better progress ahead too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Blake. Any other questions for Blake? All right. Molly?
I just have one more quick one. And I don't know if this is for Blake or for someone else, but the public members that are part of our committees, but they're not on the LOCAC board, will they be able to get one of these handbooks also?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah, the handbook, there's a link in the chat, and I actually put the handbook in the committee report area, or the bylaw and organization area. I replaced the current handbook that was in there. So they're publicly available on the website too.
Okay, great.
I also put it in the files for today's meeting. So if you clicked on files for tonight's meeting, you would find a copy of it there.
Okay.
And I would like to note, maybe a bit humorously, it now contains, I think, 95% less clip art.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
good.
did. I was like, look at the graphic design.
Yeah, it looked so much better than that last,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hey, back in the day, that was like cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not anymore.
probably back in 1962, but
Yeah.
not since then. All right, if there's no more questions for Blake, we will go to the CSD report. And I think Chuck is here tonight for that. So Chuck, I will unmute. You are unmuted. Thank you.
Yes, I'm giving the CSD report tonight. I'll be quick about infrastructure. You'll notice on South Bay Boulevard at Los Osos Valley Road, there's some underground trenching. That is for the pipeline that will run from the new well that's going up at Bayview Heights down to our water supply system. It'll tie in somewhere down around Napomo. So rather than trench through the streets, we decided to do the boring underground, hoping there's less disturbance. The 16th Street water storage tank rehabilitation, that project will go on through the holidays, end up just after Christmas. Sorry about that, people on 16th Street. And new monitoring wells, groundwater monitoring wells, the east end of Skyline, just east of Pine Street, where it dead ends. We just drilled 2 new groundwater monitoring wells. They're going to replace what had been used. It was a Golden State production well, and it had some wellbore leakage issues. We weren't sure about the salinity readings. So we've got dedicated groundwater monitoring wells now. That's a big deal. And then the big thing is that this morning, the water purveyors released our response to the Title 19 update. And we sent the letter in this morning. The key thing, first thing we asked for was an extension of the comment period. Dropping it after Thanksgiving comments by December 31st, when we've been waiting for a couple years. We just thought a little more time. That said, Ron Munns did a wonderful job putting together a letter that basically talks about our concerns regarding the lack of a real water savings verification process. A lot of calculations and theories built in here, but actual monitoring and measuring is lacking. We'd like to see the postponement of the outdoor measures. I know that there is kind of a study, I guess, an initial program that's going to be started. We don't really want to lean heavily into outdoor savings yet. We don't think that those are quite as solid. It's too easy to change the landscaping, that kind of thing. Prohibition zone offsets, there was a little talk about this. We thought that we had an agreement that any offsets within the prohibition zone would kind of be linked to the specific water purveyors. In other words, you don't get to retrofit in Golden State's territory and then build in the CSDs. That kind of technical thing we would like to work out. And then we think there were some inaccurate calculations of water savings, particularly around multiple family and the mobile homes. In particular, we don't believe that, we know that the mobile home parks don't have 2.4 people per residence. It's about 1.5. And that had been brought up multiple times, and that's just an easy fix. A bunch of little comments about technical things, numbers that should have been different in charts and that kind of thing. A comment about outside the prohibition zone, the larger the parcel, the smaller the offset requirement, which seems kind of odd. Seems like a larger parcel might be using more water and require more offset. So some clarifications we're asking for. Mostly we want to keep working on this very important document that is linked to the growth management ordinance, and we'd like to see them both together. But anyway, that's the big news. That just came out today. And Mr. Munns, I hope you're enjoying your well-deserved vacation. And I'll take questions.
Okay. Are there any questions from council for Chuck?
And that letter is on the CSD's website. It's linked right below. It's right there, top of our page.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Deborah?
Chuck, you might mention about the mitigated negative declaration for the pipeline that.
Oh, how could I skip that? Thank you. Yeah, lead story in the paper today. The environmental document for the intertie resiliency project over to Highway 1, the State Water Project, has been approved. We had comments, nothing substantial. This project is a long way from happening. For one, we need to explore funding alternatives. We're not going to build this by ourselves, even the 3 water purveyors together. So we'll be looking for grant funding. We also want to make sure that we have water agreements in place. Although state water may not be the only reason for this intertie. If desal becomes a part of the future in this county, we're going to need a way to tap into that. So I think this is a reasonable project. It's got a ways to go because we need to explore funding it, water availability, all those things. But thank you for reminding me of that big step.
Okay. And any other comments, questions?
I just have a comment about this idea of offsets in the prohibition zone. When I first heard about that, it sounded like a really good idea, but once I saw the letter, it does make sense that if the CSD, if the offsets are happening in the CSD, but the building is happening in Golden State or somewhere else, then that's a revenue loss to that water purveyor. So we have 3 water purveyors. And even though we think about our water system as one because of the aquifer, there are also 3 different purveyors. So it just adds more complication to it, right, Chuck?
And we each operate under very different rules. S&T is a mutual owned by Sunset Terrace, the people who are served there. Community Services District, we are a governmental entity. We serve 48% of the town or something like that. Golden State is a private for-profit company. And they have most of the area outside the prohibition zone. And that's the key concern there, is that they're a little bit more restrained in being able to not issue will serves, that kind of thing. The PUC is a little different animal. And if a lot of credits are given out there or in here, but building happening out there, we don't think it's fair to the people also here within our territory. So those are just some of the things that, and thank you for reviewing that letter. It just came out today.
Yeah. Great letter, by the way.
Ron Munns, he's just, I feel so confident going into these discussions, knowing that we're as equipped as anybody.
Thank you very much. I am going to open it up to the public, and we have Dave and Bev. I'm asking you to unmute. There you go.
Good evening. It's Dave Bolus. I just have a comment on the water business, and that is, I don't really understand the rules, but it seems as if water offsets in the prohibition zone should work in favor of the people who've been waiting 40 years to build here in the prohibition zone. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you
good
very
point.
much.
Good point.
All right. If we don't have any other questions, let's move on to the Chamber of Commerce report, which Jim gave me this morning. Light up Los Osos, which is Christmas lights on your home. If you want more information, go to the Chamber website. It's all detailed there. For the parade that we had last weekend, the Limos train was a hit, and there's 33 entries into the parade. The Christmas tree lighting, there's 25 people there. So that is the Chamber of Commerce report from Jim. Public comments for items not on the agenda. Do we have any of that from the public, which would be Dave and Beth? And Lindy?
And Jacob.
And Jacob. Well,
Jennifer technically too.
Yep.
Okay. Not for long.
We will say none. All right. Treasurer's
Lindy, just raise your
Oh,
hand.
Lindy. I'll ask you to unmute. Very good.
I really don't have. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've got the mute on my box and then the other. I really don't have much to say, but I look forward to a year where we all work better together, I hope. I think we all have basic mutual goals, and I just I'm glad LOCAC is still doing its thing. And so thank you to everybody that's involved.
Thank you,
Okay.
Lindy.
Thank you, Lindsay.
All right, let's go to the treasurer's report. Our ending balance was $1,561.73. And we made 13 cents of interest last month. So we're getting rich.
I'm gonna take a
Okay.
little bit because I had to re-up for Zoom.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's gonna go, it's you're not gonna make money next month, sorry.
That's all right. We understand. Land use, Larry.
We didn't have a meeting last
Okay.
month, but we
That's
did
right.
have a project. It's a vacation rental that's I'll be talking about later. And then we do have a new project. It's a lot line adjustment for our first of the year meeting, which is going to be January 8th,
8th.
Monday.
Perfect. Trees and landscape, both Andrea and John are not here tonight. So outreach, Kristen, I think we're on hold till January. Is that correct?
That's correct, but the only update that I would have is I'm grateful to those who emailed in with constructive criticism. There were some changes made on the website, how things were organized based off of feedback. Got really good feedback on newsletter. I want to celebrate Deborah for answering so in depth. And one of the things I'm going to start doing is I kind of take notes when we're doing these meetings. So I'm going to start trying to pull some information from the meetings and then do the newsletter after we have the meetings instead of doing it on like the arbitrary in the middle. So we actually have stuff to talk about what we all talked about. So that's the goal.
Right.
Yeah, just a comment on the outreach. So what I plan to do is make a condensed report, just a few sentences that I would hand off to Kristen that she could put in the newsletter about both transportation and water. And then if you wanted to get a more in-depth story, you could obviously go to the recorded minutes of the meeting and then you could, learn more about it. But I think that's one way to keep our newsletter informative and current.
Great. Okay, let's move on to the water report with Deborah.
Okay. Well, Chuck does a lot of that water report, but I do want to share something with you. I will share screen and put this into somewhere I can do. I think that's it.
Nice shot of the helicopter thing.
I know, that's what I'm trying to do. No.
It works. You're fine. I mean, we see it.
Okay. Well, anyway, let me get rid of these faces. You guys are on my map. I've been trying to put it into a presentation mode, but it's not working because I'm not very good at it. But anyway, so here's the helicopter. All right, I did it. I did it. Yay. Helicopter. And then see the green lines is the flyover path of the helicopter.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
now you can see what got mapped by the Department of Water Resources during the AEM survey. Now, if you recall, this is all about seawater. So because it's electromagnetic, it can detect the higher levels of salinity. And so they can't fly over populated areas, but they can fly over and you can kind of see where those areas are. So they can map out how far the seawater has intruded into our aquifer. Incredibly important and valuable information. We will have these results from this flyover in about 9 months. So I hope you found that as fascinating as I did.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And the only other thing I would add is that the sustainable yield, which is the amount of water that the basin management projects to be sustainable, to be removed from the aquifer for the year of 2024, will stay the same as it was for 2023, and that is 2,380 acre feet. So no change there as far as sustainable yield. And that's my water report. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay. Deborah, you want to move on to the active transportation?
Yeah, so at the Board of Supervisors meeting, they increased the road fees, and this was countywide, it's not just for us. But I thought I'd share with you a little bit of information about road fees. Road fees are what you pay. They're collected when you get a building permit. So there's some of that money goes towards roads because they figure, well, if a new house is being built, well, then you're going to be using the roads and that adds to the wear and tear. So the fee is for a residence, a retail, or some other structure. And our road fees went up. All the road fees went up, actually. But ours went from $3,629 to $3,822, and that didn't matter if it was a residence or retail or other. In 2022 to 2023, in Los Osos, three residential permits were issued, and there were no retail or other permits issued. The fees collected for those three permits were $6,691, and that brings our balance to our fund account to $87,771.65. This is money that is used to pay for transportation infrastructure upgrades within Los Osos. So South Bay Boulevard, Los Osos Valley Road, crosswalks, all of those things, you know, are funded through this account. Because we are restricted by our building moratorium, and also we're restricted by the fact that we're hemmed in by the Bay and Montana de Oro, we don't obviously have very much building here. But I thought it would be interesting to compare what another unincorporated area that's very similar to ours in size, that would be Nipomo. They have slightly more people. They have about 1,000 more people than we do. But they don't have, you know, obviously they don't have a prohibition zone like we do, and they don't have the Bay and so forth like we do. But here's the comparison. They last year, 2022-2023, issued 20 residential permits, 20 ADU permits, 3 commercial permits. They collected fees of $536,522, plus they earned interest of $89,946. The total in their fund account is $5,472,787 is in their fund account. Woo! Okay. Now, one of the reasons they have so much money is that their fees are substantially higher. Their residential fees range from $11,733 to $14,025. So if you're going to build a house in Nipomo, you're going to pay a lot more money towards these transportation fees. But I just thought it was very interesting, being the transportation person, I get very frustrated because we don't have any money. And part of the reason we don't have any money is because we don't have any building. And we don't have any building because we don't have any water. So there you go. That's my report.
Deborah, point of clarification, because I'm not sure I got the number right. What were our fees for road?
Our fees were the same, whether it was residential or retail, and it was $3,629
Now it's $800
last year, and it just went up to $3,822. So
Yeah.
just a very small increase. And so we made $6,691 last year. And our fee account is about $88,000.
I have a question if Claire is still around. I know she's there, but I don't know if she's listening. Is this because we're like because I was doing this like survey thing for the county where it was like, are we a underserved population or something? Like, does it have to do with it being a lower income area? Because I do a lot of these road fees for the development that I do for business. And like that really depends on where you're at, what that kind of thing is. And I'm wondering if they're trying to do that to keep us accessible, or if, like, why would our zone be much cheaper when it's still kind of the same impact?
Okay, Claire, you're back, and I'm going to unmute Blake too. Maybe the two of you could answer that question.
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think Blake can probably answer better than me.
Okay. I didn't know.
I'm not aware of the road fees. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm
I don't
gonna
know
have
what
to-
planning covers.
It was a public works item, and I don't know what goes into that calculation. So
Okay.
as opposed to giving a bad answer, I'll have to just say I don't know.
I support that.
So
Worth looking
it's
into.
interesting because in Napomo, I gave a range, and that's because they break Napomo into two areas. There's area 1 and area 2. Area 1 fees are a little different from area 2 fees. I don't know the difference, and I don't know why the fees are different, but I did certainly notice that they were much, much higher than what we're paying. And I don't,
Yeah,
I think it'd be good to find out.
It's really interesting because roads cost what they cost to maintain and improve. So it is interesting that it's that big of a disparate number.
Right. Well, one of the things that I mentioned at the Board of Supervisors meeting is, you know, while we're really constrained because of the building moratorium and those other things, we are also one of the most visited communities in the county because of Montana de Oro, and the estimate that I have is 700,000 people visiting Montana de Oro every year, and we don't get any credit for that.
I will say that this is not maintenance money. This is improvement account.
But we could use a sidewalk or two.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah,
We
and
need some improvement.
or
Yeah.
a crosswalk in our
I won't argue that.
and our measly $8,000 is not going to even pay for a crosswalk.
Yeah, it's just really interesting because I know how much I paid for the San Luis Obispo road fees, and I know how much I paid for the Santa Barbara road fees, and it's wild. So,
And you know, we are the 6th largest community in SLO County, and
yeah,
our roads are falling apart. And it's, especially when you have 700,000 cars going to Montana de Oro down a little 2-lane road.
yeah. I think it's good to remember though, but Blake pointed that out, that isn't maintenance, which is also an interesting point though.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Are there any other questions for Deborah from council, or I'll move to
Deborah, on your agenda, it also says Berkeley Safe Track. Did you want to talk about that?
So we sent our comments back. Thank you. I didn't include that, but I should talk about it. We sent our comments back to the consultants at Fair and Peers. They had a deadline, I believe it's the end of this month, to send their report into UC Berkeley, and I haven't heard anything. So as soon as I hear something, I will bring it to the council.
Okay, and I see Dave and Beth put their hand down. So let's go to the consent agenda items. And Larry, can you talk us through this project?
This was just a vacation rental application, and they met all the requirements of distance and everything else, and we saw nothing wrong with it. They dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, and so that's why we supported the permit to go ahead and get a vacation rental.
Were there any comments that we need to know about from the land use committee members?
No comments, and everybody just agreed to it. That's why it's on the consent agenda.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion?
I move to support the, that doesn't have a last name, the consent agenda item.
All right. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Danielle is a second. Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. All right.
Whoa,
Yeah.
look at that down at the bottom. It like, I just put my hand up and it made my hand go up. Weird.
Oh, did
wow.
it?
Oh, I did not do that. I like at the bottom it had this like, give it a second and it'll put it up. That's crazy. So,
Really?
let me try it again. You should try it. It's fun.
I'm trying it, but it's not doing it on
Just
mine.
wait. Oh yeah, look at maybe you don't have your AI set up. I think. Yep, your watch.
You know what? It did it on mine too.
Sorry.
Oh,
Ooh, Zoom things.
okay.
All right. All right. That
Hey, one
has-
time I was having a meeting, there was like a party, and I don't know what caused that. So yeah.
Well, it is December. So regular agenda item, the Community Advisory Council Handbook and Training Sessions. Is there any other questions, comments that council members have on that? I know we talked about it a bit with Blake.
I do. I have a comment.
Yes.
First of all, I think it's great. And I encourage everybody to look through the handbook and attend the training. I came on the council sort of during COVID, there were no trainings. And so I'm certainly going to go to a training, even though I've been on the council now for a few years. I think that's a great idea. But I wanted to remind the council, and certainly some of you are new, so you don't know this. When I first came on the council, I was treasurer. We had a little problem with our checking account at Mechanics Bank. And we had to do some things that were, that we thought we could fix the problem. Because the Mechanics Bank was requiring some things from us that we didn't have. So in order to satisfy the requirement, we became a 501c4. We actually went through the process of becoming a 501c4. Now, not a 501c3 is a nonprofit. You can raise money for charitable things. This is not that kind of thing. A 501c4 is for community, like, you know, a property
like advocacy
organization, or you know, a community, an HOA or something like that. You can be a 501c4, and that really sort of fit better what we are. And the only thing we really do is at the end of the year, we send in a little postcard IRS statement to the IRS maintaining our status as a 501c4. It turned out that it didn't even help us because Mechanics Bank still did not give us our money. And so anyway, we don't go to that bank anymore.
Yep. We changed banks.
We're now at American Riviera, where we actually make 13 cents on our $1,000, which is amazing to me.
Go Jay.
I just wanted to make everyone aware and remind you, if you were here during that time, that we are a 501c4. We can stay a 501c4, or we could just go away.
Don't we have to pay
wanna talk
annually
about
some
that.
kind of fee for that?
There's no fee. Well, there
Okay,
was
I was a
there was
501c7.
fee
It
when
was
I
like,
filed it. When I
Mhm.
filed it, but there's no fee now. We just have to file a tax return.
okay.
Yeah.
So something maybe to be discussed.
Yeah. So
Cambria was having a similar issue with the same bank for the
Oh,
same
really?
reason.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're a little picky.
Yeah, Deborah, and just the question was, before before we needed a bank account because we were paying for venues to hold our meetings.
Yes.
You know, we don't do that now, but possibly in the future we will be able to do that again. And so the value of having a checking account, one, so we can do something with the check we get from Bruce every year, which is real nice. You know, and then to pay certain, you know, expenses that we do have.
Yeah.
So
So
if it's not costing us anything,
yeah. No, you're right, Larry, because
not-
we used to pay to rent a room where we would meet in person. But then after COVID, we stopped doing that. Of course, we have to pay for our Zoom room. And then we have an election coming up. We will be electing board members, so we'll have expenses related to the election. And the last time we had an election, we actually did an outreach event at the Red Barn, and we had to rent that space. And so we do sometimes have expenses, but they're very minimal. And yes, we do need a checking account.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I did not know that we were that. In theory, we could get, if I knew that checking account, I could put Zoom on whatever the debit card is that comes with that, and then what do you call it? Jim wouldn't have to drop me checks for reimbursement, because before we had that problem all the time. So
Yep.
I'm gonna make a note of that.
Okay, make a note of that. I do definitely, I mean, I know I've never had the training. I've been on LOCAC 6 years now, and it has not been offered the whole time I've been on.
So I'm on wow, I love how my screen doesn't do it. I'm on CTAC, and they did an orientation with me, and they gave me like 100-page document and personally told me what was going on and got me up to speed. And there was like slideshow info and like how the permit processes work and like all that kind of stuff. And they even have like they have 100,000 acronyms. They're all defined in here. It has been very handy to get me up to speed as fast as possible. So I can see a training would be great, because it was a huge learning curve trying to figure out where everybody was at.
And what the training looks like, because the last one that I remember happening was in 2019, because it was the first year that I worked for Bruce. And it's not just planning, but also public works and county council and administrative staff all come and answer questions about how, like, they might interact with the council and what the council's needs are across the county. And I believe they buy you lunch too.
Cool.
Yeah, that's
Pizza.
great to be able to actually meet the staff people that you're going to interact with, and
Right.
they get to meet you. And did the supervisors come as well? Do they introduce themselves? And
I believe at different times, to adhere to the Brown Act, the supervisors all came.
Can't be there at the same time.
got it.
Hey everybody, it's fancy time.
But I hang out the whole time.
Okay.
Or I did when it was
Good.
offered. But yeah, as of 2020, so for the last few years, there hasn't been one, and a lot of advisory councils have a whole new membership since then.
Yeah.
Very valuable. Very valuable.
And I did, after reading the handbook in Paris, which was not a great thing to do, I just found that the focus was very narrow. So I think for LOCAC, we're going to continue with our strategic plan, how we have our goals. We're going to continue with those and move forward the same way that we have been moving forward. Okay, if there's nothing with that, let's go to business items. And first on the agenda for business items is to do a motion to accept Jennifer Harrison onto LOCAC. I sent everyone her bio before I left for a month, so everyone should have had it and is ready to vote.
Yeah, I make a motion that we accept Jennifer Harrison onto our LOCAC.
Can I get a second?
So I'll second.
Okay. And all in favor, please raise your hand. Jennifer, you're one of us now.
Woo!
Welcome.
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 Thank you. I'm excited to learning lots already.
Yeah,
Thank
you're going to learn. Our meetings are usually between, let's say, 25 and 60 people, depending on what the topic is. It's great that you came today, because you could really just hear, the core group from the community and our group and what we're doing. So I think it actually worked out well for tonight.
Great, perfect. I do too.
The other thing I had, because it was a month ago when I did the agenda, any other comments for the December 5th Board of Supervisors? I think we pretty much handled it. Anything else? Dave and Bev, I'm going to ask you to unmute. There.
Hi, I just wondered if Jennifer's bio is available to the public.
I can make it available to the public. Is that all right with you, Jennifer?
Sure, no problem.
Okay. Yeah, we will go ahead and put it on our website, Dave.
I will do it as
Thank
we
you.
speak.
And I presume she's District 1, is that true?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
I'll put it on as we speak and put a link in the chat.
Perfect, thank you. All right, the last thing that we have on here is after the debacle with the Anastasi project approval, do we have any thoughts on how LOCAC and land use can become more involved and not knowledgeable about the land in Los Osos? Any thoughts from the committee?
I mean, I always have thoughts, don't I?
I hope
As
you
somebody
do.
who actively has to permit things and works with the slow YIMBY, so I'm well educated about what the process looks like. I actually think that we should actually have like a learning sessions periodically about how these things work, how to, because you know, like when we had the stuff with the restaurant and we had the stuff or the bar, what goes into that? What does it goes into permitting an event? Because like it was crazy for me because I'm like, all of this stuff is actually like when we put on the More Bay Try, we have to meet with like 21 different land agencies and organizations and what the things are, and then we have to do stuff in the back end, and people really don't know how this all works, and they kind of feel like they can just do things. And then like when there are violations, when are there violations? So you know, if we had, you know, whoever those permitting people are, whether we have a city one, an event one, it would be a really cool way to have a learning session during meetings.
I have a comment.
Okay.
The Anastasi project was a sleeper. It had been around for so long, and I think people had just forgotten about it until their timeline ran out. They had to get the land use map approved, or they were going to have to start a new permit process, and they didn't want to do that. So all of a sudden, there it was, and we were totally unprepared. But I don't think I think that's the exception, not the rule. However, I think we do want to stay really tapped in to what's going on. And with that in mind, I want to share with everybody that there is an opportunity here in Los Osos where the Sunnyside School is. Apparently the school, the coastal school is looking to sell that property. It's a large property. I don't know exactly how many acres it is, but it's a large property.
It's 10.
10, okay, 10 acres. And I've heard $5 million as the price, but this is property that it's public property. It was a public school. It should stay in the public in some form or fashion. We have lots of use for that space, for a park, for pickleball courts, for all kinds of activities. The buildings could be used for all kinds of public things, and we should not allow that property to leave the public sphere. We should make sure that, and we should make sure that the Board of Supervisors is on board with us maintaining that property as public access, public property for the use of the community. Because if we lose it, if it goes to a private entity, we're not going to have any space for parks. We're not going to have any space for activities. And our tiny little community center does a great job, but it's not enough for the amount of people we have here. So I'm just putting that in your consciousness. Let's follow this trail. Let's make sure that we stay on top of it, and we make sure that we do whatever we need to do to help the county make a decision here about how that property gets used.
Well, isn't it owned by that property in particular? It's probably owned by the school district, isn't it? Which is separate from the county.
It is.
But the school district is selling it.
Yeah. So I guess we would need to learn and figure out how we would go about even advocating for that.
Well, Blake has his hand up, so maybe he can help us with that.
That's right, Blake.
I would love to talk about this and get everyone's help to the extent that I can. The property is for sale. I believe it first has to be offered to a public entity before it would be offered to a private entity. I want to respect a closed session item about this, but know that you have at least one supervisor who is pounding to make this happen, because it is, for lack of a better term, plug and play parkland with other potential possibilities on it. So you don't have to convince us, but what I could and would suggest you do is campaign other supervisors, especially during a budget shortfall year, that this would be a really smart investment. Yeah, it's going to cost some money up front, but this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I think I can leave it at that safely. I would encourage you to work with other supervisors.
Thank you for that encouragement. I want to say that when I spoke at the Board of Supervisors meeting about the Anastasi project, and both Trish and I both mentioned the fact that we have a lack, we have the least amount of park space of any community in this county. And I brought that up, and Supervisor Ortiz-Legg said, "Oh yes, I want that for Los Osos." So she's on record saying that she supports Los Osos getting parks. So, but words is one thing,
Push it.
dollars
Yeah.
is another.
Yeah,
So we have
because-
to figure out how to get the money.
Because her word on the Anastasi project was so well done.
Well, I would ask Blake, what kind of public agency could take on something like this?
CAL FIRE.
Yeah, well, CAL FIRE has a training ground there. I think, I don't know.
Okay, how about the library?
I know that we had, the first bite at the apple, so to speak, is that they had to offer it to the county first. And so that's where we're at currently.
Why is it
And
not natural to go to county parks? I feel like while there's
Yeah.
facilities there, I know all intimately that county parks have stuff that they rent out to other people too. And they have maintenance folks and like rangers and everything built in. I feels like that would be the natural place to go.
to purchase it for parks?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the other question then for anybody. What's the pitch on that? What? Because it's not like, oh, we don't have enough parks. I hear this from my friend that's in Shandon all the time, that she's like, we don't have a library. I'm like, well, you're in Shandon, so that's why. But like, what's the pitch rather than we don't have parks? Because nobody actually cares. They're like, you have beaches, you have MDO, you have whatever, right? So like, I feel like there's got to be something that's like motivating for politicians to say, look, my district isn't getting this money, but it's good for all of us because, and I don't know what that is.
You
I
need
think that-
public input.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I mean,
what,
I think
Larry?
that it's a property asset. I mean, not
Okay.
just the potential parkland, but there's buildings there that while, yeah, they have potentially a lot of deferred maintenance on them. Those don't have to be the only thing that goes there. If the county owned it, they could put offices or some other, something
Mhm.
there. And it's a long-term unrealized asset.
I agree. Okay, thank you. That's what I needed. I appreciate that.
I just
Yeah.
had to think that one through for a minute.
The slow police department can go there because I already know they have them in just like weird houses. We'll just live
Yeah.
there.
So we need to work on this. We need
Yeah.
to,
So,
Yeah.
is there any members who would like to come onto a subcommittee to work on this, like we did for the last project?
I shouldn't, but
I
I want to
would.
because I
I
know
would.
this stuff.
Krista,
would.
Molly, Jennifer?
Sure.
Okay.
Trish, think we need to put this on January's agenda.
We will.
It's an important item that
is.
needs to be worked on, and it should be put on the agenda right now.
Well, not right now, but
And-
it
and
will
then-
go on the agenda.
Well, I didn't mean right now, but when the agenda comes out. And then Kristen, besides for having a point of why we need this, if we can get 14,000 people in Los Osos
Mhm.
to bombard everybody with information that we wanted, it's a lot better than 10 of us
Oh, I
sitting here
don't,
talking about it.
I think the problem is politically, you're looking at like, we have our own supervisor. So like, think about politicians. It's like, why would a politician go to bat for something when their constituents won't get that money? And I think it's really important that it has to be beneficial to the entire county when we sell it, rather than a bunch of people want this, if that makes sense. Because SLO would win everything because they're just more, you know, they have more people to make noises about everything. So we have to do it like politically for it to really work well.
Well, I think
Are you saying, Kristen, are you saying that it needs to be pitched as a benefit to the whole county as opposed to just a benefit to Los Osos?
That's correct.
Yes.
Mm.
well,
Trish,
I
I
think
just want to
that-
make sure that you saw my hand because I didn't
Oh,
hear you say
sorry.
my name.
Now I
Yeah,
see your hand.
Sorry.
Danielle.
No, that just for the, I was trying to volunteer for the subcommittee.
Oh,
Okay, perfect. I have you
Okay.
down.
Perfect.
all right. So maybe I should use my little hand instead of my real hand. Here, I
Your
always
AI
use-
hand.
Yeah, there. Work. There's a reverse argument, I think, as well, and that is, as public property, this should not go to a private person. We should have, there should be some resistance to turning this public property over to a private landowner.
Well, it would likely go to a private school, as this, you know, as the next kind of tier.
I mean, it's already being rented out by 2 different schools, I think, and I think maybe
Right.
even more. So
But I think, like, you know, and I'm just throwing out, like, I know SLO Classical Academy's been looking for a spot for a long time.
Really?
I don't know what their
Wow.
interest might be, but
yeah.
there's other schools that might be interested in it. But I'm not arguing that.
Yeah.
You won't see any argument for me that the county should have it.
All right.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
Next is Deborah.
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay. Council members, you're good on this, and then I'll go to the public. Okay. Lindy. You should be unmuted.
You hear me?
Yep.
You can hear me?
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have some history on this. I think when they first were partially what's sort of ironic is the school that's Monarch School was built because we needed another school because we had so many children. Well, as soon as the Monarch was built, then Sunnyside was closed. And so that's one of the ironies of the school district having the taxpayers fund a brand new school when maybe we didn't really need it. But we had ideas, a friend and I had ideas of putting a theater there using the house. Anyway, there's so much potential that the community really could use. And when was the skate park put in 98 or 99? So long ago. And
After
I mean,
that.
that's been the excuse that we could not really, that no money could really come in to help even our park be maintained at full need, is because we got so much money to build a skate park. But that's been 25 years or so, 23 years. So, and though we haven't had the growth that would actually fund, you know, the parks and so forth, we never did get the parks we were supposed to have. So I'd like to be involved with the committee too. I think it's a good direction to go. And I really see that there's so many uses for it that are needed. So I hope Blake and Supervisor Gibson are definitely giving us the right directions to go so we don't get lost in the dust someplace where something worse than us comes along.
All right. Thank you, Lindy.
What, I know that we raised money, or there's money for a dog park. Does that money has it disappeared? Because you could easily push to have that as a location for it.
That money is basically sitting there, and it's in the CSD's fund, and it's not a whole lot. It's just going to basically get us started. It's going to eat it all up just with planning and getting some retention. We have to wait for the wildlife or the habitat conservation plan to get approved.
But not if
there's
we
a
had
few
the
bushes.
view Sunnyside. I would think it's already been developed. You just need to put the fences up, like, and you know what I'm saying? It's not a new place.
You mean to
That's
put
what
a
I'm saying.
dog park at Sunnyside.
Mm-hmm.
That would work. There's a
Yeah.
lot of, they've got some nice play fields for kids though too, so. There's,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
really think it's a jewel and we need to
So
form a
we
committee
will,
and see.
okay. So after the first of the year, I will put together a subcommittee and we will set up a time to meet, and I'll make sure this is on the agenda, Larry, for the January LOCAC meeting. And if there's no other comments,
I just want
questions,
to go, good job, Deborah, because this wouldn't have happened without you being aware of it and bringing it up.
Thank you, Deb.
let's adjourn.
Okay, thanks,
Oh,
guys. Oh,
is Blake still on or did he leave?
Yes, he's right
I'm
here.
here.
Okay, can I ask Blake one more quick question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is a general question. So there was an article about county fees going up for a lot of different departments for different types of activities. And I just wanted to check, is all that done based on third party like fee studies?
Yeah,
When-
and
When
it's
building
also,
and planning and all these departments raise their fees?
it's based on cost recovery. A lot of times it's for the labor that goes into it, and it's for actions that are taken that benefit an individual, not the county at large. So if you were going in to require a service of the county that isn't of public benefit, then it is the county policy to recover the cost of doing business for that service
Yeah.
from the applicant.
Yeah, and so my question though is just, when you guys do fee increases, is it based on a fee study done by, like, you guys hire a consultant to do a fee study and look at changing fees?
I would have to assume so. I'd have to look at that item again to verify that. I mean, yeah, it sounds logically to say yes, but I don't want to give
Yeah.
you bad information.
Yeah, so that's just something I'd like to know.
Sure.
That that's happening. Thank you.
I'll follow up with you on that, okay?
Okay, great, thanks.
Any other comments, questions?
there's a rocket launch in 20 minutes if you're, well, at 9 o'clock.
Okay, everybody get ready, go out and watch it. And I will adjourn the meeting at
There's meteor,
8:36.
there's also, there's meteors tonight
Ooh,
too.
Meteors.
Last
I
night
will
of
look at
them.
both. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Happy
Happy